Hurricane Lee has weakened, but it is still a major Category 4 storm. Right now, Lee's maximum sustained winds 150 miles an hour in just 24 hours. That storm intensified, going from 80 miles to 160 miles an hour. Lee is now trending about 550 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands. Forecasters say they think it's going to take a sharp turn north. It's still too soon, though, to know whether it will have an impact on the U.S. mainland. An Air Force hurricane hunter flying into Lee's eye wall. The storm was a Category 5 when the team made these passes through it. The crew's navigator saying, as you can see, it was mostly dark inside, but then the lightning allowed them to see what was beyond their radar. The crew is expected to take off again tomorrow morning to track Lee's progress. I want to go right now to Dr. Kevin Reed. He is the Associate Dean of Research at Stony Brook University, and his research focuses on extreme weather like hurricanes. And Dr. Reed, yesterday, Hurricane Lee underwent rapid intensification in 24 hours, and we mean rapid. This has been happening a lot. Is this now the new normal?
Yeah, well, first, let's talk really quick about what rapid intensification is. When we typically see this with hurricanes, we define it as something that undergoes about a 35 mile per hour increase in a 24-hour period. And what we saw, just yesterday with this storm was almost 85 mile per hour increase in just a 24-hour period, which is really astonishing. It actually makes it one of the most quickest, storms ever in terms of intensification, which is really impressive. And whether we think about this as the new normal, I mean, it's worth thinking about the fact that the Earth has increased its temperature by almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the last 100 plus years. And so when storms go over warmer sea surface temperatures, they are more likely to undergo rapid intensification like we just saw here.
Last week it was Hurricane Idalia, also undergoing rapid intensification. Are we now looking at that statistical link to climate change?
Yeah, I mean, this is something, of course, that scientists are continually looking at. But the reality is that we're very likely, or very certain, actually, that that a lot of the changes that we've seen over the last 4 decades are really linked to the warming sea surface temperatures. And so we have seen an increase in the likelihood of rapid intensifications. And it's very closely linked to the warming of the sea surface temperatures. And furthermore, I mean, when we look into the future, we think out to the next decade or two, scientists are quite certain that this increase in rapid intensification occurrences is likely to continue.
Dr. Reed, this may sound like a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We saw this with tornadoes. They seem to be getting stronger and they seem to be getting faster. Right now, is Category 5 the top strength for a hurricane, and could we be looking at a Category 6 storm in the future in 7 and 8?
Yeah, and so let's first talk really quick about how we define categories, and they're mostly driven by the type of damage that a storm can do. And so, of course, it's possible to have very strong storms, and there has been advocates actually for adding a Category 6 into the National Hurricane Center's classifications. But it's worth mentioning that, Category 5 storms, while they're becoming more common, they still are quite rare. And the damage from a Category 5 is something that we should always be prepared for, even if we were to develop a Category 6 category.
Dr. Reed, and I'm glad you didn't make me sound real dumb. But with regards to these storms, we see these well-developed eye walls right now. And people have a tendency to believe that the only thing that is going to damage their house or destroy their house is if they get hit directly by the eye of the hurricane. What about the size of these storms in terms of their overall bandwidth and how far out those bands go nowadays?
Yeah, so you brought up a really good point, right? Which is that the impacts of a storm can expand really far from the eye. I mean, we've seen this with recent storms, such as Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Harvey, just going back a few years, in which a lot of the impacts from the storm are actually felt well inland, in part due to changes in rainfall. And it's worth noting that scientists are certain that the amount of rainfall is changing in these storms, that they are actually raining more amounts and higher rain rates over large portions. And of course, when you're in the eye wall region and the storm is threatening to make landfall, that is where a lot of the damage can occur, in part because of the storm surge that's associated with these landfalling storms. And really, especially at this process, right, we're pretty far out from where this hurricane might impact at least the continental United States. But it's important to note that these storms are so large and they churn up the seas so much that we will start to feel the impacts even on our coastline in the southeast, even if the storm doesn't make landfall. And there'll be larger waves, there'll be chances for rip currents. And so it is something that we need to keep an eye on.
Dr. Reed, so many people want to retire with that Knights of Rodanthe image in their mind where they have the cottage that overlooks the Atlantic Ocean and they put on that cup of coffee and go out and sit by the seashore. With these storms intensifying as quickly as they are and as large as they are, right now we know that Florida, for instance, insurers are fleeing Florida. If you were looking at coastal property, what states would you avoid?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, you can't avoid hurricanes, right? So hurricanes occur everywhere along the eastern United States, all the way from Texas, all the way up through, New York, Connecticut, and into Massachusetts. And so, all it takes is one storm, no matter where you live along the coastline, for it to really have an impact. And so, it's just important to think about when we are looking at these places and when we're putting in policies in place for codes, for example, of where we can build homes. It's important to think about what the potential impacts of hurricanes are, but not just the impacts of what hurricanes would have been 30 or 40 or 50 years ago when a lot of these codes and policies were put in place. But I think it's time to update a lot of them to think about what are the impacts of hurricanes now and how do we anticipate that they're changing in the future.
Yeah, that coastal erosion that you talked about is very, very real on the Atlantic seaboard. Dr. Kevin Reed, thanks for being with us.